Buildings in Europe are responsible for 40% of total energy consumption and 36% of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's very important that we talk about renovating the buildings in Europe. And that is not only good for the climate and energy security in Europe. We shouldn't forget we spend most of our time in buildings. So improving buildings means we will have also a better life. Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Fee Compass Jam Session podcast. My name is Robert Pernetta and I'm a holding fund manager at the European Investment Bank. I'm pleased that you're listening in today, and today we're going to discuss how to use financial instruments to renovate buildings and to make them more energy efficient. So there are two things we're going to talk today about. That is A, how do we combine loans and guarantees with grants? And B, how do we develop a pipeline of bankable buildings? Lithuania and Latvia are among the countries that have already tried the combination of grants and financial instruments. And what both countries have done, that is really impressive. And therefore, I'm very pleased to welcome two great speakers today. This is Kristina Vaskelienė. Labas, Kristina. She is Business Development Officer at INVEGA, the National Promotional Bank of Lithuania. And Kristina and I, we met many years ago, and I always was very curious to follow what you're developing in Lithuania. And Aleksejs, Kaņējevs, who is Deputy Head of Program Development at ALTUM, the National Promotional Bank of Latvia. And I have to say, I learned a great deal from Aleksejs and his team about combination. And he is my go-to man when I have any technical questions on combination. So it's great to have you here, and we are looking forward to learn from your experience.
Hello from Lithuania. Thank you, Robert, for having me on this podcast.
And hello, Robert from Latvia. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you for the invitation.
So I did a bit of research on the topic, and I learned that the Baltic countries have the highest share of people living in multifamily buildings. And I also learned that you inherited your buildings from the Soviet Union. Can you tell us more about what that means in practical terms when you renovate buildings, Kristina?
Definitely, I'd be pleased to. So actually, there are 35,000 of buildings that you mentioned that we inherited. And what we can say about these buildings is that the majority of them, probably around 90 to 95%, are extremely energy inefficient. They were built up until 1993, and usually they have a very low energy class. So it's like D, E, or even F in many, many cases. And speaking about the building sector in Lithuania in general, buildings and residential housing sector ranks second by energy consumption among other sectors. So only transport sector is, in the top one, but building sector is extremely energy inefficient. And that is why we really need to put a lot of effort into making this sector more energy efficient.
Thank you, Kristina. Well, I see that's a really important topic for you. Aleksejs, can you contrast the Latvian situation? Is it similar? Is it different?
Yes, it is very similar, and we are pleased to share our knowledge and to learn from our neighboring countries, like in this case Lithuania, but also from Estonia and also from other countries as well. And in our case, we have quite active financial sector, but the situation is quite the same. We have like 27,000 multi-apartment buildings which are in need for renovation. So the demand for such support is quite huge. We are calculated that around 1.5 billion euro is the funds which are required to finance, to renovate those buildings.
Thank you very much. That's very insightful. Kristina, now I have a question. How do you use financial instruments to retrofit buildings? What is your role at INVEGA?
So at INVEGA, we are acting as a fund-of-fund manager, and we are directly implementing the financial instruments that you want to talk about today. And we are combining these financial instruments with various grants. Actually, what is interesting is that for buildings modernization in Lithuania, we had probably all the possible options for grant and financial instrument combination. So we tried technical support, we tried capital rebate, we tried an investment grant, and all these forms, we have some experience about them because we tried them all. About the financial instruments, so we started started doing this with the ERDF financing coming from 2014-2020 European Union funding programming period. And we had 3 different financial instruments financed from the ERDF. All these financial instruments were used to issue loans for buildings modernization. They were basically differentiated by the final beneficiaries. So one financial instrument was for state-owned infrastructure. Another one was for municipality-owned buildings. And the third one, and the largest one by far, is for the residential multi-apartment buildings modernization. And all of these financial instruments were actually combined with grants. And all of them achieved very good results.
Thank you. That sounds really good. Now, in Latvia, Aleksejs, did you also try everything, or have you been less experimental than the Lithuanians?
Yeah, in regards of ALTUM, actually, we are involved in the residential multi-apartment buildings renovation since 2016. Before, it was done by special agency, Latvian Development Agency, and they were providing grants. But in 2016, Cabinet of Ministers approved new set of regulations, which provides that ALTUM is implementing like a grant instrument and financial instrument. That's one scheme, but 2 different instruments which we are implementing on the moment. In the December last year, we have started also new program financed by a Resilience and Recovery Facility, where we are going further. We are using already combined financial instrument, one scheme, one operation.
So that is very interesting. What I would like to understand, you use a loan instrument and you use a guarantee instrument, and you combine both with grants. Can you tell us more? Why have you chosen this way?
Yes, we are trying to use the commercial banks as much as possible in this program, providing the loans and for residential multi-apartment buildings. They have already some experience providing loans for this specific sector already for many, many years. So they are continuing to do that. And since those loans for energy efficiency purpose usually are long-term, like 10 to 20 years. In some cases, which is around 60% of cases, actually, they require a long guarantee. So we are designed a special product for that purpose. So there is a long guarantee available for the commercial banks in this case. And what we are adding on top of that, we have that grant instrument, and we are providing grants. So we have special cooperation agreement with the commercial banks. We have a specific contract, grant contract with a final beneficiary. Usually this is authorized person representing the building, the owners of the apartments in that particular building. And the commercial banks are servicing those authorized persons. They are actually disbursing the loan funding and also grant funding from the program. And for the loan, as you mentioned, they are receiving the guarantee when it's required.
Thank you, Aleksejs. But you also mentioned that there is a loan program run by ALTUM. Why do you have a guarantee program and a loan program?
Yes, that's a very good question, actually. Usually, there are some credit policy run by the credit institution, by commercial bank. So there are some cases where they are not able to finance or not willing to finance a project. So we are stepping in. So ALTUM in this case can provide a direct loan with a grant. So it's still 2 instruments. We are putting those instruments under one financial contract. We are signing one financial contract with the end beneficiary, with the final recipient, and we are providing and disbursing the loan amount and grant amount. Actually, that grant amount which you are disbursing, that's an advance. So we have reserved the 10% of final payment, which is being disbursed after the project completion. So the 10% of the grant amount is reserved and it's paid out when the project is completed and all the documents are settled with ALTUM.
Thank you, Aleksejs. This is really good. And it's good to hear that ALTUM offers the support to everybody, even to low-income households. How do you address this challenge in Lithuania, Kristina?
Well, regarding the lower income owners of the apartment, we involve the municipalities and their support comes in because if there are financially challenged people living in the apartment building, the municipality is actually covering the loan installments and pays back the loan on behalf of the lower income people. So in this way, they can benefit from the energy efficient apartments and do not have challenging financial expenses.
Wow, that's really impressive. So good to hear that energy efficiency can be for everyone. Now, you talk about very different types of grants, Kristina. You talk about technical support, capital rebate, interest rate subsidy. How does this work together?
So I think the overarching elements are actually available in all of the financial instruments that we have. First of all, we want to take care that there is sufficient technical support for the project implementation. We think that it is very important in order to keep the project pipeline sufficient and also to keep the motivation of the project administrators and also final beneficiaries to implement and move forward with the projects. So technical support has really proved a very important prevailing element throughout all the financial instruments. Regarding the grant, I think one also prevailing element is that this grant is always well attached to the results of the project. So the form of the grant itself can be a little bit different. For example, for state-owned institutions and their buildings, we used a repayable grant model in combination with a financial instrument. So even though it could be a 100% grant, we still need to check and achieve the results that were initially planned by the project. So energy savings, energy class, etc. For the residential multi-apartment buildings, the grant element is paid only after the results are approved and checked that the energy class is achieved and energy savings are achieved as well. So in this way, we are kind of keeping the motivation up to also implement the project in time, to plan it accordingly, to implement it in a good way, in a good quality, and ensure the achievement of the results. And I think this is one important element for a combination of financial instrument with the grant.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot of grants, Kristina, and also Aleksejs mentioned grants. Now, I have a very basic questions. We talk about financial instruments and we talk about investments in projects that should pay for themselves. They generate cost savings. Why do we need so many different forms of grants? Aleksejs, do you want to speak about your experience?
Yes, in our case, Ministry of Economics paid great attention to this specific feature of the program, actually. Yeah, we had to check the payback period of those particular projects. And in our case, initially it was 20 years, the payback period, the maximum payback period. But due to increase of energy prices, actually, the Ministry of Economics amended it. So it was at the later stage of the program, it was 35 years. And that is already taking into account that grant element, meaning that without a grant, the payback period would be like twice something like that for those apartment owners, which actually even now when we are speaking about the apartment owners, they are worried. 20 years loan for them, it's too much in many cases, especially for persons in the retirement age, let's say. So that's the main reason.
Well, that is very important, and it's important to understand that both things have to work together. So now let's change a bit the perspective. Let's look at the people who live in the house, what you call the final recipient. What is their journey? Kristina, can you tell how in Lithuania, when you live in a multi-apartment building, how do you get your building renovated and financed?
Okay, so the first step actually comes not from the owners of the multi-apartments, and that is maybe an interesting aspect that we have of the model for renovation in Lithuania. The first step is actually for the administrators or associations that are working and, taking care of those particular buildings to initiate the gatherings of the owners of the multi-apartment building and to discuss with them the potential investments, the need for the investments, so the alternatives of the investment needed for the building to be modernized and to achieve energy efficiency. These administrators, they can be private entities or associations are just established from the owners of the apartments, but they play a very crucial role. They initiate the gatherings of the owners. They facilitate the decision making. They prepare all the technical documents needed for the implementation of the project. And they later on go and contact with the agencies regarding the grant element. They come and apply for the loan on behalf of the apartment owners. So they are playing actually the most important part in the project implementation. And this works very well because the actual final beneficiaries, they do not have the experience to implement such a project. They do not have the tools. They do not have the knowledge. Sometimes they do not have enough motivation. And the facilitation of these administrators or associations is extremely important because it means that final recipients actually do not need to lift a finger to do anything until the project is finalized and finally they are living in an energy efficient apartment.
Yeah, the customer journey is really important, and I see you pay a lot of attention to this. I just want to mention a few weeks on the 14th and 15th of November, FI Compass will be on the road, and we are going to have a workshop in Vilnius talking exactly about financial instruments and energy efficiency. We're going to visit 2 buildings. One of them is a multi-apartment building and the other one is a public building. Now, Kristina, I have a question. What does this have to do with your coffee mug?
Well, when there was an event of FI Compass in March, there was a competition for projects and we decided to make a movie about the modernization of these particular projects. And we actually used the project that we are going to visit as a very good example because it's a nice quarter of a few buildings that we are going to see. Next to these buildings, there is even a few unrenovated houses. So the difference is very much seen and plain. And we decided that because we had a drone, we actually had the possibility to climb to the roof of that building and to see beautiful views from the top and check, how the roof was renovated as well. It was winter time, so it was really cold while filming that video. And I think it had a very nice, unfamiliar touch to the video. But we will not be able to climb to the roof this time. However, I'm sure that the buildings we will see will look amazing from the bottom as well.
I'm really looking forward to see the building and to watch the side and the difference between the old and the new ones. For those who won't have the chance to come to Vilnius, in the script of this episode, you will find the link to the video Kristina mentioned. Now, Aleksejs, how is the customer journey in Latvia?
Yeah, it's in a way pretty similar to the one which Kristina described. What we have done actually, in addition to that, we have introduced a one-stop shop, let's say, and we are providing also like consultancy and technical expertise on those technical documentation. So we have a specific unit within ALTUM who checked all those energy audits and also technical documentation. And in a way also the construction contracts, let's say, we try to protect those apartment owners, final recipients from unexpected changes of the costs, let's say. So during the implementation, it's not always possible. Sometimes there are need for additional investments into projects because not, especially with the construction, it is like that there are possible hidden costs. But otherwise, it's the same that final recipients or apartment owners, they should come together twice, actually. First, they have to initiate the project, and second time they should come together to vote, to approve the project cost and the loan, let's say, and the features of the loan, interest rate and term of the loan. Let's say. In addition to that, in Latvia, project managers, usually they are private persons, but in some cases also companies, they are quite important and they are managing all those projects. Even though authorized person, the legal person is the one which is concluding a contract, signing a contract with ALTUM, there are real persons who are working with those projects. And the role of those project managers is very important. So the proficiency of those project managers are key factor for us. And also, of course, the quality of construction companies. Those are key elements which we are closely following. And when we are deciding on project approval, that are the most discussed issue, the quality of the project manager and quality of the construction company.
Yeah, that is very insightful. That's really good. I often heard that renovating your building is like getting married. You do it only once in your life. And this is why you get a wedding planner who takes care of everything for you, because these people do it on a regular basis. So it's good that you have a one-stop shop for building renovation. So this is very good. And now we talked a lot about how public money is used. Do you have any private investment involved in your schemes? Kristina, Do you want to tell about the Lithuanian situation?
Oh, I can speak quite a lot about this topic because this was a priority for us for almost a decade now. And what we learned is that one of the most important lessons to attract additional financing from the market is to actually have a sufficient and stable project pipeline. And the second lesson that we learned is also to manage and have a lot of data available on the loans. So basically, you need to be sure that you can show your portfolio to slice it up in so many details that the potential investors could ask for. And with the residential houses modernization, we did that. And we approached international financial institutions and borrowed on behalf of the fund. So the repayment of those loans are guaranteed with the reflows coming from the projects. That is why we need a lot of data, good quality data, and also sufficient procedures for administering these loans. But with these lessons and with these efforts, we managed to achieve 5 times more funding, which was initially put into the fund, into the financial instrument. So I think that is a extremely good result.
That's a very good leverage. What about the losses? I mean, they lend to whoever lives in a building. This is very different kind of people. There must be quite a lot of risk associated with that. Do you see that the money is coming back?
Absolutely. Actually, we have not a lot of delays regarding the payback of the loans. Usually throughout the whole portfolio, they are not more than 5%. But these are not defaults. These are just loans being paid a little later than they were initially planned to be paid. But after some additional efforts that we put into the administration of the loans, after contacting the final recipients, we have no defaults, basically.
So that must be pretty attractive for investors. What I hear, investors are looking for long-term investments that are green and that have a reliable payback. So that sounds really good. Congratulations. Aleksejs, in the guarantee scheme, you sent the grant via banks. How do you motivate banks to touch public money and to touch grants? My experience is that they rather avoid that.
Yeah, it took us some time to agree with the commercial banks about the terms of cooperation, but I'm aware that commercial banks are willing to provide the best possible service for the customers, for the authorized persons and final recipients, apartment owners. And under this model, they can disburse the loan and grant in one payment, let's say, and they can follow the project implementation. They can follow the cash flow of those investments. And that's probably the main reason why they were eager to implement this particular scheme in cooperation with us. We have signed 4 cooperation agreements with 4 banks, so 4 banks are active and then providing the loans under this particular scheme.
Well, that is good to hear that banks are willing to undertake this, and they're not only undertaking this for their profit and for their green credentials, they really want to make their customers happy. Now, we talked about what you have done so far, and Aleksejs, you have mentioned the RRF, so the Recovery and Resilience Facility of the European Commission. Can you tell us how this links to the instrument you have so far designed with cohesion policy funding?
Yes, thank you for the question. We analyzed our experience regarding the combination of grant instrument and financial instrument in one operation. And Ministry of Economics, based on that evaluation, they developed a new scheme, which actually is based on fee compass experience and fee compass materials on combined financial instruments. And we are now providing a loan with a capital rebate, and also guarantee and capital rebate for the increase of energy efficiency in multi-apartment residential buildings. And what does it mean? Let's say we are providing the loan, 100,000 euro. So we have to check whether the building is renovated and whether the results, energy efficiency increase, let's say for 30%, have been achieved. And in this case, we activate that capital rebate. So the loan amount was 100,000 euro. We check the results. And capital rebate is activating, meaning that in this case, for example, 49,000 euro would be used for repayment of the principal amount. So in one night and one day, the final beneficiaries apartment owners, liabilities decrease substantially for 49% towards the commercial banks. In this case, towards the ALTUM, because we were the loan provider. In case of commercial banks, the effect of the scheme is similar. But what we are doing, we are providing the guarantee and capital rebate. So in theory, the authorized person would contact the commercial bank, sign the loan agreement, let's say the same, 100,000 euro. On top of that, we would provide the guarantee, and when the project results are achieved, we will check that and activate the capital rebate. So we would repay the part of the loan provided by the commercial bank instead of the apartment owners. This is a new scheme. We have introduced, as I mentioned before, it in December last year, and currently we are still working and the clients are applying for that scheme. We have approved the first projects, but no deal signed yet.
This is really good, what I hear there. Quite often we have this disruption when the one programming period ends and the new programming period starts. And what you have done in Latvia is you even use a different pot of EU money, but for the client, nothing changes. It's a real seamless customer journey. I'm really impressed by that. Kristina, what are the plans for the future in Lithuania? How are you moving into the new programming period?
Actually, very similar to what Aleksejs have told. We are also making this transition very smooth one, because we are still issuing loans, even though the previous programming period it's coming to an end, right? And we are doing that with the attracted additional resources from the market. But for the upcoming programming period, the existing programming period already, what we are planning to get is an additional funding from the ERDF and Cohesion Fund, which would reach almost 200 million euros. But with these 200 million euros, we are asked to once again achieve the leverage effect of 5 and achieve additional 700 million euros of funding from the private market and other resources in the market. So we need to do this quite quickly, because the project pipeline is already building, and we have around 500 projects that are already prepared and ready to come to INVEGA to ask for a loan for their modernization projects. So we are moving into this programming period full speed, well prepared, and with many ambitions.
I have now 2 very topical questions. How do you deal with the high interest rate in your financial instruments? And how does the high inflation affect your projects? We see that construction costs are rising very quickly. How do you manage this?
These are 2 very important, very good questions. Regarding the inflation, absolutely, we see there is a huge rise in the investment costs. And, the grant basically covers this increase in the inflation, and payback period comes back to 20 or something years for the project. So it's solved in this way. And regarding the rising interest rates, since we have a huge portfolio of previous funding and coming back, a lot of loans are being repaid, we have agreed with the ministries that we are going to use the reflows to cover basically the difference between the current market prices and the loan price for the final beneficiaries, because we want to keep the 3% interest rate on these renovation loans for final beneficiaries. We do not want them to be expensive, because this would have an immediate effect on the project pipeline and their motivation to implement the project.
Thank you very much, Kristina. This is really good. And this shows also one great advantage of financial instruments. These are the reflows. And with the reflows, you can do many things which you can't do with fresh money coming in from the EU funds. Thank you very much. Aleksejs, how do you address this in Latvia?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Yes. And the solution, there is no silver bullet actually for that. And what we are doing, we are using the public funds, obviously. Public funds allows us to provide the loans with a preferential interest rate. So the interest rate for planning period 2014-2020, it was 3.5%. 5% fixed. So now there is a slight increase actually. Now we are providing the loans with a 3.9% annually fixed, and the public funding. So the loans are provided mostly from the public funds on the moment, from Recovery and Resilience Facility. And if there will be a need, we will attract additional private funding. We will borrow on the financial markets. For the increase of construction costs, obviously there was that increase. It is stabilized now, and we have to admit that grant element has decreased a little bit under the RRF facility. So previously it was 49% or 50%, and now on comparable terms it's 40%. So there is a slight decrease in the grant element, but still there is interest from the market. So we have projects in our pipeline, and it's the number of those projects are going up, obviously, because of the huge need and demand from the market. And what we can see that construction companies, they are willing to, actually it's very important that there is specific construction companies which are willing to work in that specific market, because the market is quite demanding. Those apartment owners, in some cases, they are very specific customers, and that's a very nice element. And we see that construction companies, they are still able to find the good deals and to provide on good terms those services. That's the answer, that we are closely following the market development and adjusting our program terms according to that.
Thank you, Aleksejs. For those who are interested to read more about the Latvian experience, I know it sounded pretty complex. We are preparing a written case study, so you will have the chance to read this, and we will publish this case study on the Fee Compass website. Before we finish, is there anything you still would like to mention we haven't covered so far? Kristina?
Well, I think I can summarize by the most important lessons what we learned, and for the listeners also to consider these lessons of Lithuania if they are applicable to their countries as well. So, as I mentioned, data available on the whole portfolio of the loans. This is extremely important, and it will definitely serve you in the future, even though you might not think it at the moment. Also, stable project pipeline development. We really need to take care and find a responsible body, maybe an agency or some state institution that could coordinate centrally an organized way the whole modernization program and solve the problems or some issues that might occur at the state or municipal level. Well, of course, the topic that we spoke today about, the right balance between the financial instrument and different forms of grants, is very important. And I think what we also need to consider regarding this point is that we should look into the projects and analyze these different projects that are in the main cities and also in the regions, because the situation might be very different. The real estate prices differ a lot. The sizes of the buildings differ a lot. The construction prices even might differ also quite substantially. So we need to look into these differences and try to find the best model suitable for all of the regions, cities, and all the projects.
I think that is a very important message, that there is no one size fit all. Aleksejs, can you tell us, like as a last message, what you want to tell us from the Latvian experience?
Yeah, I just wanted to continue the Kristina's message that actually there is a great opportunity to use combined financial instruments to set up a program which would be a long-term program. And I mean that the long-term approach, that's very key for this specific market. So from my point of view, it's the best possible solution. The program is adjusted bit by bit, time by time, but actually the model is the same, more or less, because to start something new, it creates a lot of burden. Those programs are so complex that it would take a lot of time and effort. So, and that would be the great opportunity to start the program, use combined instruments, features, and adjust it when it's needed.
Thank you very much. I always learn a lot listening to the two of you. So I want to say finally a great ačiū to Kristina and paldies to Aleksejs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for having me, and I will be looking forward to our meeting in Vilnius.
I also want to say a big thank you to the listeners who were tuning in to today's episode of Fee Compass Jam Sessions. I hope this podcast will inspire you in the journey to make Europe climate neutral and making also homes warmer in winter and cooler during any summer heat waves. I also know that even during Baltic summers, it can get pretty hot, and it's important to be in a well-insulated building. And hopefully I will see many of you in Vilnius at our FEE Campus workshop on the 14th and 15th of November. Both Kristina and Aleksejs will be there. They will present their work, and you will have the opportunity to talk to them face to face. And for those who can't make it, we will publish the slides on the FEE Campus website. If you have any questions, just drop us an email at contact@feecampus.eu. We are looking forward to hearing from you. And until next time, goodbye.